Ranger.
Hi-yo, Silver!
A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo Silver. The Lone Ranger.
Hi-yo, Silver! Away!
With his faithful Indian companion Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains led the fight for law and order in the early West. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. The Lone Ranger rides again.
Estacado was an isolated, sparsely populated town in the west, 40 miles from the nearest stagecoach line and hundreds of miles from the nearest railroad. Then came the time when men found gold in the hills near Estacado. In the days that followed, people from all over the territory headed to Estacado to seek their fortune. Hearing rumors that the gold strike was attracting confidence men and outlaws, the Lone Ranger and Tonto set out from the north to investigate.
Back in Moulton, I heard that Dan Gerber was heading for Estacado.
Dan Gerber? Him outlaw you captured years ago. You think him planned something bad for Estacado?
We'll find out.
At that moment, Dan Gerber and his henchman, Cass Warren, were riding toward Estacado with a scheme all their own.
Dan, I wish there was something I could do.
There's nothing anyone can do, except the hombre who shot my shooting arm a couple years ago.
Would you recognize him if you saw him again?
You bet I would. There's no one like him in the whole West. He's the Lone Ranger. I figure we're 8 or 10 hours ahead of anyone else. We'll have the papers for the stagecoach franchise signed, sealed in the safe before they get there.
I don't like the idea of a sheriff handling them for us.
Why not?
Well, if anyone suspected I had any connection with you when I make my bid, I wouldn't have a chance.
You stupid deadbeat. Why do you think I took you on?
Well, I thought...
Because I've got a record as long as your arm. And nobody ever heard of you. You're my front, Cass. Just my front.
What about Django, the driver? Will anyone recognize him?
I'll keep him out of your way.
Thanks, Dan.
You're a real gold man, aren't you, Cass?
What do you mean?
You've got a yellow streak running right through you.
Oh, now, Dan. Where do I meet you after I've signed the papers?
There's only one hotel in town. I'll be there. And don't worry. I'll get out of this coach before we hit the outskirts.
Meanwhile, at the sheriff's office in Estacado, a young man and his bride were talking with Sheriff Ed Gillum.
We want to settle here and grow with the town.
Good. Maybe you'll open a cafe.
Oh, goodness, no.
We want to start a stage line, Sheriff. We heard you're the man who handles the franchise.
That's right. Here. Sit down. Now, do you know anything about the business?
Well, I know that as news of the gold spreads, the town will keep growing. People in freight will be coming in and out of here day and night.
They'll have to travel by stagecoach, so Don and I thought if we could link up Estacado with the junction at Moulton...
Yep, that's right. I've been wondering when some smart feller'd come in here with that idea.
Well, has anyone applied for the franchise yet?
When they had a chance to grab it a few years ago, there was nobody smart enough to take it. Said this town would be good for nothing but lizards and buzzards. Well, let's see. You know, the county supervisor invested a lot of power in me. Mainly, I reckon, because they thought I wouldn't have a chance to use it. But just the same, they left this book of law and regulations with me in case something like this came up.
We're ready to abide by whatever the law says.
Yeah, but the main thing is, can we apply?
Of course. I don't see why not.
That's wonderful.
Now, hold on a minute. First of all, have you got a stagecoach and horses?
Well, not yet, but the Stanley lines in Carson sold out to the railroad. Their coaches and horses are up for sale.
We have enough money to buy a few of them.
Well, the law says you only need one to start with. Wait a minute. But even if you had 100, I can't give you a franchise.
Well, why not?
Because I'm authorized to give the first qualified applicant a temporary permit to operate. If, at the end of 60 days, you've met all the requirements, then you'll be given the franchise.
We'll meet them or bust.
Now, wait a minute. There's a catch to it. Doggone it, they always put this stuff down at the bottom in fine print.
Well, what is it?
You have to send out the first coach on a regular scheduled run no later than 24 hours after signing the application.
You mean if we sign now, we have to start tomorrow?
That's right. No later than noon. Now, it'll take you 8 hours to get out of Carson and buy your coach. Maybe 5 to get back.
It's awfully short, but we'll sign.
I'm glad.
So am I. You know, it pleases me to see a young couple like you take a chance on your future. Now, hold on a minute. See if I can find the forms for you to fill out.
Well, tell me, Sheriff, why do they have these time limits on a stage line franchise?
To protect people from varmints like Dan Gerber. Why, he started any number of stage lines, used poor equipment, had bad schedules, sold stock in these companies, and then closed up, staying within the law all the time.
But no one would give him a franchise anymore, would they?
No, but it's good to protect others from fellas like Gerber from starting all over again. Howdy, mister.
How do you do? I understand you're in charge of the stagecoach franchise for Estacado.
That's right. I'll be with you in just a minute.
Sheriff, I'm in a hurry. I want to make sure that my stage line application's the first one.
Now, here are 2 copies, Don. Fill them both out and sign your name at the bottom. Both you and your wife.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Are those for the stage line franchise?
That's right, mister. And if you came in here to be first, I'm afraid you're a mite too late.
But that's How could they have...
I'll be glad to show you how it works.
A few hours later, a scowling Cass Warren entered Dan Gerber's room at the Estacado Hotel.
Well?
We were too late, Dan.
Too late.
Somebody else filed an application, got a temporary permit just as I got there.
Why, they're dirty. Who was it?
A local fellow, Don Wyman.
Never heard of him. What's this stuff about a permit?
Well, the sheriff says that's the way they're running things now. You sign an application, you have to do things in a certain time, or the franchise doesn't come through.
They're getting smart, aren't they? How many coaches does this Wyman have?
None right now. He's going to buy some of the Stanley Line coaches in Carson.
I see. And when does he start operating from here?
Well, if he doesn't start by noon tomorrow, his application is void.
In that case, he'll have to be leaving for Carson right away.
But what can we do?
See that he never gets anywhere near Carson.
You mean you'd kill him?
No. You will, you and Django.
No, wait a minute, Dan. I'm no murderer. I never killed a man in my life.
I know. That's why you're going to kill one now.
No, Dan. Not me. Why do we have to kill him? There must be some other way of getting rid of him.
Sure, there's lots of ways, only we haven't got the time to take them.
Why, if anyone suspected that I had anything...
That's right. You lose not only an option, you lose your neck. You gotta be smart, Cass.
No, Dan. I won't do it. I'm quitting right now.
Go ahead. Walk out the door.
No. What would you do?
Since you joined up with me, I got enough on you to make sure you get 20 years. You walk out that door and I'll see that you get it.
Now, wait a minute, Dan. Let's talk this thing.
I'll do the talking. I don't trust a man that's yellow. I gotta make sure he won't rat on me now or ever. That's why you're gonna kill Wyman. Or take your 20 years.
I'd heard you were tough, Dan. But I didn't think you were like this.
Now you know.
A short time later, in the Badlands outside of Estacado, Don Wyman raced along at top speed toward the trading center of Carson. Meanwhile, Cass Warren and Django sped along a side trail that joined the main road not far away. When they reached the main road, they stopped.
There he is, coming around that far bend.
I see him.
We're just in time. Come on.
What do we do now?
Just get your rifle up and wait. When he starts getting close, track him in your sights. Then take a little lead and let him have it.
Well, what about you? Aren't you going to shoot too?
I got my orders.
You can't even see the road from there.
I don't have to. I'm just gonna make sure you don't miss.
What if I do?
I won't, Cass. I never miss.
You mean if I don't get Wyman, Dan told you to shoot me?
That's right.
Here he comes.
You sure he's the right one?
No. No, he isn't. Yeah, he's the one.
Then kill him.
Did you hear that, Donald?
Shots come from that direction, Kemo Sabe.
We'd better investigate. Come on, Silver.
All right, you got him. Snap out of it, Warren.
Come on, let's get out of here.
Not yet. Get down there and look. Make sure he's dead.
No.
Don't give me trouble.
Is he dead?
Come on, then.
He's still alive, Tonto. Bring the bandages from the saddlebag. Take it easy, fella. We'll help you as much as we can.
Him hurt bad, Kemo Sabe?
I don't think so. He took a bullet in the shoulder.
And me here, 6 shots.
I did too. They couldn't have come from this man. He isn't carrying a gun. Whoever shot at him missed with the others.
And plenty places to hide up there.
Yes, whoever shot him is probably gone by now. It would be impossible to track him in that rocky ground.
You're wearing a mask.
I'll explain about that later. Right now, we've got to get you to a doctor. The nearest one is at Estacado. You've lost a lot of blood. Do you think you can stay in my saddle long enough to get back there?
I'll try. Thanks.
Good. I'll take him the back way to avoid being seen. Meanwhile, take this silver bullet to Sheriff Gillum at Estacado. Tell him what's happened. Ask him to meet us at the doctor's office.
And me do that.
After being treated at the doctor's office in Estacado, Don Wyman was asked a few questions by the Lone Ranger and Sheriff Gillum, but he was unable to shed any light on the identity of the man who shot him.
I sent Tonto for your wife, Don. She should be here any moment.
Well, we were together until I left for Carson. I doubt if she knows any more about it than I do.
Sheriff, who has first call on the option to open the stage line if Don and his wife fail to meet the deadline?
A fellow by the name of Warren. Cass Warren.
Oh, I've heard of him. Small-time promoter from the Midwest.
You think maybe he did it?
I don't know, but he'll bear watching.
By golly, when I get back to the office, I'll send for him and ask him.
You may not learn much that way.
Don. My poor Don.
No, honey, don't worry. I'm almost as good as new.
The Indian said you were shot in the shoulder.
Just a flesh wound. The masked man came along before I lost too much blood.
Masked man?
He's an old and trusted friend of mine, Mrs. Wyman. Take my word for it. The mask stands for law and order.
I see. I don't know how to thank you enough for saving Don's life.
Don't try, Mrs. Wyman. From what the sheriff tells me, you two have something more important to worry about. Your stage line option.
I'd forgotten about that.
Maybe the way the whole thing's turned out, you'd like to drop the idea.
Oh, no, Sheriff. We can't do that.
What else can we do, Ann? The doctor says I have to rest this shoulder for about a week.
I'd like to extend your time, but I can't. I have to do what the law says.
We're not through, Sheriff. Far from it. I don't know anyone who'd shoot Don, but if he thinks he scared us off, he's sadly mistaken.
Well, what can we do?
You just relax. I signed those papers too, remember? I'm going to Carson by a stage and team and be back here on time.
Oh, I won't let you do that.
It's a long ride to Carson.
I'll make it somehow.
Good for you, Mrs. Wyman. I admire your spirit. Perhaps Tonto and I can help you.
Help us? How?
There's a little-known shortcut to Carson that goes directly across the mountains. By taking it, you can more than make up for the time you've lost. I'd be glad to show you the way.
That's kind of you, mister.
It may be dangerous.
I'm not afraid.
Do you think somebody might try to shoot her?
We're the only ones who know about the attack on Don. You should be safe at first. It's almost impossible to keep a secret like this in such a small town. If whoever shot at Don is determined, he'll almost certainly try again.
Have you any idea who might be behind it?
Only a hunch, Sheriff. But I have a plan that may force him to show his hand. I would like you to talk to Cass Warren. Then while Tonto stays here to keep an eye on him, Mrs. Wyman and I will head for Carson. Then on the way back...
After the Lone Ranger and Mrs. Wyman left for Carson, Sheriff Gillum sent for Cass Warren. When questioned point blank by the sheriff, Warren became indignant.
Sheriff, I don't like your insinuations.
I'm not insinuating anything. I'm merely asking you a direct question.
I can produce witnesses to prove that I was in my room all day.
I didn't say that you shot Wyman. I'm asking for your help. Now, you might have been talking friendly to somebody and let it be known what Don Wyman was up to.
Well, that's different. It happens that I did talk about it in the cafe after I left your office. Any number of people could have heard me.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if they found out that Mrs. Wyman had taken her husband's place and was on her way to Carson now.
Is that so? Well, what they do is no concern of mine.
No, I suspect it isn't.
Well, if there's nothing further, I'll see you tomorrow.
That's him.
Me watch him close, Sheriff.
I don't get it at all. How could the sheriff find out about Wyman so fast?
He didn't say.
How could he know anything except... Why, you stupid, bungling idiot.
What's the matter?
Don't pull that innocent act on us. You didn't kill Wyman, did you?
Well, I certainly thought I did. He looked dead.
Did you make sure? Did you go back and finish him off?
Cass looked at him. He said he was dead.
You sure messed up this one. What's the matter, Django? Casket on your nerves? I never figured you had any. Or are you turning yellow, too?
Now, wait a minute.
All right, let it go. You probably just wounded him, and somehow he came back here.
Well, the sheriff did say that Mrs. Wyman left for Carson to handle the deal herself.
She did, huh? Uh-oh. They're trying to draw us into a trap.
Why do you say that?
Come here and take a look. Look down there in front of the cafe. By those packing boxes. You see that Indian?
What about him?
Take a good look. Have you ever seen him before?
Oh, why?
You've been framed. You were brought to the sheriff's office and told about Mrs. Wyman, so maybe you'd show your hand.
What are you getting at?
And now I know how Wyman got here so fast. Somebody brought him.
Well, what's that got to do with the Indian?
The Indian's name is Tonto. He was with the Lone Ranger when he shot me. I'd know him any place.
I'm not getting mixed up with him.
He's not here, don't you get it? He probably left the Indian to watch you. He's protecting the dame on the way to Carson.
This is your chance, Gerber. Gonna take it?
Sure, and you're gonna help me. Only I don't want any gunfire. We'll have to stop them on the way back.
How?
They'll have a stagecoach. That means they'll come by the main road. I know a place where there's a big boulder on the edge of the canyon above the road. A charge of blasting powder will bring it down. Now, if we time it right, the Lone Ranger and the dame will never know what hit them. It'll look like an accident. Cash, you stay here and give the Indian a chance to see you now and then. Come on, Django, we're going out the back way.
That night, the Lone Ranger and Ann Wyman arrived in Carson. After buying horses and a Concord stagecoach for her new line and hiring a driver, Ann stayed overnight with friends and left at dawn to allow ample time to reach Estacado before the time limit expired. The Lone Ranger rode on ahead of the stagecoach. He kept to one side of the road and watched for signs of a possible ambush. Meanwhile, at a canyon overlooking a narrow bend in the road, Dan Gerber and his henchmen prepared to destroy the oncoming stagecoach.
All set, boss. We'll light the fuse and get behind those rocks over there.
Good. Here comes the stage now.
And I see she's hired herself a driver, and the dame's inside. Where's the masked man?
He's probably not far away. He'll come running when he hears the explosion, then let him have it.
Right. Coming closer.
I'm going back with the horses to keep him from breaking away when that explosion goes off.
Don't turn around, Django. Stand up and drop your gun.
I didn't expect you so soon.
Hurry up. Drop it, I said. Or get away from that fuse.
Drop the gun, masked man. I've got you covered. Drop the other one. Now back up against that rock.
But Mrs. Wyman is in that stagecoach. She's done nothing to deserve this.
She's in the way, and so are you.
Silver! Silver! Come on, boy! Get him! Gerber, I'm turning you and Django over to the law for attempted murder. Now on your feet.
Mrs. Wyman, your driver has just 10 minutes to start the first stage around to Carson.
We're ready, Sheriff.
We've already signed up 2 paying passengers. Thanks to you, mister, and your Indian friend.
When Tonto saw your stagecoach coming, he rounded up Cass Warren. Warren broke down and told everything. We got enough evidence on these men to send them up for 20 years.
I didn't realize what you'd done until I came here and heard them quarreling among themselves.
You risked your life to save Ann's. I can never thank you enough.
Don't try. It's thanks enough to rid the West of men like them. We'd better go, Tonto.
Wish you could stick around, Estacado.
Thanks, Sheriff, but we have other work to do.
Oh, mister! Mister!
Too late, Ann. He's already gone.
He's gone, but he'll be back if he's needed. He's the kind of a man that's willing to help honest, ambitious people like yourselves get a start in the West. He's the Lone Ranger.
Silver, away!
The Lone Ranger.
Hi-yo, Silver!
A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo Silver. The Lone Ranger.
Hi-yo, Silver! Away!
With his faithful Indian companion Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains led the fight for law and order in the early West. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear, The Lone Ranger rides again.
Any sign of it yet?
Not yet, boss.
Well, it'll be getting dark soon. But who can complain about a little waiting?
With our share of this job, we ought to be able to take it easy for a long time.
Yes, sir. A long, long time.
Here she comes.
Rein up! Keep your hand away from your gun.
You John Walker?
Yes, but how do
Get
you
out.
know who I am?
That your bag?
Yes.
All right. Empty your pockets into here.
I'll give you my money.
I said empty your pockets. I'll take that.
There isn't much money.
There's more than you think, Mr. Walker. More than you think. Well, so far, so good. Bert, look! Come on.
feet.
Who are you? What do you want? I haven't got any money on me. I didn't take anything from the stagecoach. You can search me.
This isn't a holdup, and I'm not an outlaw.
But the mask?
I have reasons for wearing this mask. Let's get back to the stagecoach. All right, fella. Step down.
Who are you, anyway?
You're the one that has the explaining to do.
Stage driver and man who ride on stage, both dead. Me put them in coach. Find this on floor.
Handkerchief. Initial J.W. Did you find anything else, Tonto?
Only this.
A broken match.
Me find it on ground by stage.
It isn't mine. I didn't have anything to do with the holdup.
If you didn't have anything to do with it, why don't you tell me what happened?
I heard some shots. When I got to the rise over there, I saw a couple of masked men holding up the stage.
We also heard the shots. This gun has just been fired. I can smell the burnt powder.
Well, I fired a couple of shots at the holdup men.
Tracks show men ride away. If this fellow not with men, why him try and get away?
Well, I saw his mask. I didn't know who you were.
It's understandable.
We follow trail of men him say holding up stage, Kemo Sabe?
No, Tonto. It'll be dark in less than an hour. We'll ride into town and see our old friend Sheriff Briggs and tell him what happened.
Me drive stagecoach.
We'll meet in the sheriff's office. Let's go.
Yeah, but suppose the sheriff doesn't...
Doesn't what?
Nothing. Nothing.
Ready to ride?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Let's go.
So you say you fired 2 shots as the holdup men rode away?
That's right.
It's too bad that stagecoach driver or his passenger isn't alive to back up your story. Jeff, if you're innocent, you shouldn't have tried to run away.
But I told you, Sheriff, I knew if I was seen around there, it'd look bad for me.
And it does look bad, Jeff. Especially since you've been out of prison less than 5 months.
Sure, I made one mistake, but I served my time.
Sheriff, I don't like to interfere, but past mistakes shouldn't be held against a person.
I feel the same way, but some people don't.
Mr. Scott, for instance.
I'll have to lock you up, Jeff. The evidence is all against you. You've served time. It's known you need money, and, well, with 2 people dead.
Sure. Give a dog a bad name and he lives with it for the rest of his life.
I'm sorry.
You think him guilty, Kemo Sabe?
No, Tonto, I don't.
Then what we do?
We'll go after the men who are guilty.
I certainly hated to do that.
Sheriff, who is this Mr. Scott?
Oh, he's president of our bank here in town. His daughter and Jeff, well, they seem to care for each other.
Doesn't Mr. Scott like Jeff?
No. No, he doesn't, and, well, you can't blame him for that. Jeff's prospects for the future are not very good. The only job he could find was that of a ranch hand at the Circle C spread.
Sheriff, a man shouldn't be judged by what he has, but by what he is.
I sure hope Jeff is innocent.
Well, in the morning, Tonto and I will try to follow the trail of the men Jeff spoke of. You'll hear from us.
Good luck.
Adios.
I wonder what's keeping him.
Well, that must be the boss now.
Oh, howdy, Martin. We expected you before this.
Well, I rode the back trails. I didn't want anybody to see me with this box of clothes. How'd everything go?
Oh, without a hitch.
Good.
Look, here are his papers.
Huh. Well, with these, you won't have any trouble identifying yourself as Mr. John Walker, bank examiner. Now, those are your clothes.
Say, these are pretty fancy.
But not too. They're just what an honest, respectable gentleman would wear. I ought to know. I've been one long enough.
So now you're gonna get some money the easy way, huh?
Well, why not? Do you know what it's like working in a bank, handling money, lots of money, seeing it, touching it, and none of it yours? And well, I do. And I've waited for exactly the right minute. And now I'm collecting.
Worm has finally turned, huh?
Yes. As you so ably put it, the worm has turned. And it'll be profitable for all of us.
Still gonna pull the job tomorrow?
Yes. I'll meet you here after the job and split with you. Oh, and you don't have to worry about the sheriff looking for you right away.
How come?
There's a young kid named Jeff Williams in jail. They think he held up the stage.
That's a break for us.
And I'll see that young Williams escapes tomorrow. The sheriff and his deputies will be so busy chasing him, they won't be around to start looking for you until you've had a good head start.
Hey, you think of everything, don't you?
I told you. I waited and planned a long time. All right, now here's what you're to do. Tomorrow being Saturday, the bank will close at noon. You're to arrive at the bank at precisely 3 minutes to 12. Mr. Scott.
Yes, Martin.
Would you authorize this check for payment, sir?
There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Here are those papers you wanted, Dad.
Thank you, Jean. Jean, about your going to the jail to see Jeff, I feel that...
I've told you, Dad. I don't want to discuss that anymore. As soon as we close the bank, I'm going over to see him.
I'm looking for Mr. Scott.
He's right over there, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Scott?
Yes, may I help you?
Oh, thank you. I'm John Walker, the bank examiner.
Well, how do you do?
How do you do, sir?
Won't you sit down?
Oh, thank you.
We expected you yesterday.
Well, unfortunately, I was delayed a little.
That delay may have saved your life. The stage was held up yesterday, and both the driver and passenger were killed.
Oh, say, that's terrible.
Yes. And now, if I may see your credentials.
Oh, yes. Yes, of course. You know, one can't be too careful.
Mr. Scott, would you like me to close the bank up now?
Yes, please, Martin. Mm-hmm.
Miss Scott, I heard you say you were going over to see Jeff. I wondered if I might go with you.
Why, yes, of course.
I thought possibly there might be something I could do to help him.
Jeff needs all the help he can get right now.
Well, your credentials seem to be in order, and I'm sure you'll find our books the same way.
I'm sure I will, sir.
You'll excuse me now. I want to lock the door after Martin and my daughter.
I'll see you later, Dad.
All right, Jean.
Mr. Scott?
Why, what's the meaning of this?
Don't make a sound and you won't get hurt. Now unlock that door.
Any trouble?
Nah. Get him tied up and gagged. Boy, this is the easiest job we ever pulled. No shooting and all the time in the world to clean out the place.
But, Jeff, I believe you. Doesn't that mean anything?
So you believe me? But I'm still in jail. I don't know. Maybe your father's right.
Oh, Jeff, please don't say those things.
Even if I don't hang, even if I get out of this mess, what can I ever hope to offer you? Whenever anything happens, I'll be the first one they come looking for.
You made a mistake, but you paid for it.
And if you married me, you'd be making a mistake. Gina, I think it's best if you don't come see me anymore.
Jeff, you don't mean that.
Please go.
Jeff!
Please.
Well, it was hard to do.
What else could I do?
Jeff, this morning I heard some angry talk around town. Everybody's convinced that you're guilty. And some people are ready to act. With only a deputy on duty, you won't be safe even in here.
But if I try to get away, it'll be like saying I'm guilty.
If what I heard happens, it won't matter to you tomorrow whether you're guilty or not. You can always come back after your innocence is proved.
Trail of men who held up stage going to stream, but them not come out.
Guess they used the old outlaw trick of riding into a stream to cover up their tracks.
They'll be plenty hard to follow then, Kemo Sabe.
We'll ride down both banks and see if we can find out where they left the stream.
We're doing all right.
A nice, clean job. Now get the key out of his pocket. We don't want anybody walking in here.
I got it.
Let's see how much we got.
All right.
Raise your hands.
Say, what?
Get your hands up.
Sure, but...
Look, is this some kind of a joke?
It isn't. I just decided to cut you two out of our little deal.
Shots sound like they come from over ridge.
Come on, Tonto. Dead.
This one dead, too.
These credentials identify him as John Walker. He's a bank examiner.
Look, Kemo Sabe. Match broke in half.
Yes, broken the same way as the one we found at the stagecoach holdup.
It not seem right bank examiner be mixed up in holdup. Remember man who was killed on stagecoach? Him not have credentials or wallet?
Except for that handkerchief with the initials J.W. J.W. could stand for John Walker.
You think him real bank examiner and these men steal wallet and papers?
Yes, Tonto, I do. And what we found here could go a long way toward proving Jeff's innocence.
How that, Kemo Sabe?
Well, it backs up Jeff's story of the 2 hold-up men. And since Jeff's in jail, he couldn't have done this.
We go tell sheriff?
Not yet, Tonto. First, let's try to pick up the trail of the person who killed these men.
Me not understand this. Horse turn onto road, go in direction of town.
Tells us one thing, Tonto. The person we're after isn't afraid of showing his face.
Let him outlaw, him ride back trails.
That's right.
What we do now, Kemo Sabe?
We'll tell the sheriff just exactly what we've found out.
Me wonder why Jeff not still locked in cell.
Not a sign of Sheriff Briggs or any of his deputies.
Maybe that sheriff now.
All right, men. Maybe we'll have better luck tomorrow.
Something wrong, Sheriff?
Yes, plenty wrong. Jeff managed to get hold of a 6-gun somewhere. Forced one of my deputies to let him out of jail. I've had a posse out all afternoon trying to pick up his trail. I had hoped that boy was innocent, but after this...
Sheriff, I believe Tonto and I found the 2 men who held up the stage.
You did? Where are they?
Both men dead.
Dead?
Yes, shot by a third party.
Sheriff.
Don't be alarmed, miss. I'm not an outlaw.
I can vouch for him, Miss Scott. Now, what's your trouble?
It's my father. He didn't come home for lunch, and nobody's seen him all afternoon.
Oh, well, he's probably just working late over at the bank.
But I went over there, and nobody answers.
Was your father alone the last time you saw him?
No, there was a bank examiner with him.
Come on, Sheriff. I'll explain later. You have a key?
No, Dad has the only one.
With your permission, I'll break it in.
Dad! Dad, are you all right?
I guess so.
Let me help you, sir.
Thank you. Who are you?
He's no outlaw, Mr. Scott. Take my word for that.
But the bank it's been robbed.
By the bank examiner?
Yes. It must have been him. I was hit on the head, and when I came to, I was all tied up.
Tonto.
Yes, Kemo Sabe.
I found this on the floor. Broken exactly the same way as those we found at the scene of the stagecoach holdup and in the line shack.
The same man been in all 3 places.
It could be Jeff Williams. Both the robberies and the killings took place after he broke out of jail.
So young Williams has escaped. If that isn't a confession of guilt, I don't know what is.
I still believe that Jeff is innocent, but I'll need some help to prove it.
I'm just as interested in proving a man innocent as capturing a guilty one.
I'll need your help too, Mr. Scott.
If the boy is really innocent, I'll do all I can to help prove it. But what makes you think Jeff Williams isn't guilty?
Tonto and I found the 2 men who held up the stage. It was one of those men posing as the bank examiner who robbed you.
Did you find the bank's money?
No, but both of them were dead. Shot by a third person.
Why are you so sure that third person isn't Williams? I say he was in with the 2 men on that stage holdup, and after he broke out of jail, he killed them and made off with the money.
Very sound reasoning, Mr. Scott, except for one thing. Tonto and I followed the trail of the third person. It led directly back into town.
Then it couldn't have been Jeff. He wouldn't have risked coming back to town. He'd have been spotted in a minute.
Exactly. And the man who rode into town wasn't afraid of being seen.
Everything you say may be true, but that still doesn't tell us who the man is.
With the plan I have in mind and your help, I believe we can make the man reveal himself. Now, I'll act as bait for the trap. We'll leave one body at the line shack. And Jean...
I'll spread the word around town that the sheriff has captured the 2 men who robbed the bank.
That's right. Now, here's what we'll do. Donald, keep my guns and gun belt, will you?
Me do, Kemo Sabe. Those make you look like one of men we find in shack.
Luckily, both he and I are built about the same.
Here, bandage, Kemo Sabe, to cover face and mask. Then no one able to tell you not man who already dead.
The whole plan depends upon this deception working.
It worked, Kemo Sabe.
I hope so, for Jeff's sake.
Pete, give us a hand.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Scott.
Oh, hello, Martin. Well, the sheriff has the two men who robbed the bank today.
Oh.
The Indian found them. One of them was dead. But the sheriff's hoping Doc Barrett can pull the other one through so he can tell us what they did with the money.
Oh, that's good news. The one who's still alive, he hasn't said anything?
Oh, he's in no condition to talk yet.
How much, Scott? Doc Barrett says the man may be able to talk by morning. Apparently, he wasn't as badly hurt as we thought.
Well, that is good news.
Now I'll take his pal's body down to the coroner.
Cow.
Seeing what an outlaw looks like, Mr. Martin?
Yes. Yes, that's all, Sheriff.
Martin, you're on your way to the sheriff's office. Now get going.
Thank you, Jeff. How do you like your new job?
Well, I can promise you this, Sheriff. I'll never try to escape from behind these bars.
Jeff better be careful what he's saying. I happen to know my daughter's planning a life sentence for him.
Dad.
Gene and I certainly owe that masked man a lot.
I think I owe him the most. He not only recovered the bank's money, but he made me realize how wrong it is to judge a person on his past and not think of him by his hopes and ambitions for the future.
He's a great man, Mr. Scott. The West will grow and prosper with the help of men like the Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger.
Hi-yo, Silver!
A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo Silver. The Lone Ranger.
Hi-yo, Silver! Away!
With his faithful Indian companion Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains led the fight for law and order in the early West. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. The Lone Ranger rides again.
Well, Dan, did you get all the provisions?
Yes, sir. Oh, I also stopped by the post office. It was a letter from Tonto. He addressed it to me the way we arranged.
How does he like Washington, D.C.?
All right, I guess. But he says he misses the West. He claims he'd rather face a gun-crazy outlaw than try to cross a Washington street.
Too many carriages, Kemo Sabe. Well, Tonto will be back soon. You know, Dan, that was quite an honor for Tonto to be called to the Capitol and receive that award.
Yes, it was. But it was an honor he deserved. He's done a lot to better the relations between the settlers and the Indians out here.
He certainly has. Well, I see he's afraid you'll have to return to your college classes before he gets back here.
Well, I have another 3 weeks. It's been a short vacation, but a good one. I guess it pays to have the Lone Ranger for an uncle. Oh, by the way, I brought back a newspaper from town.
The Gold Creek Clarion. This is James Curtis, publisher.
Yeah, the newspaper is just starting. This is its first edition.
Well, apparently they're having an election for sheriff.
A paper supporting a Marshal Grant. Haven't we heard of him, sir?
Yes, Dan, we have. He was marshal in Texas a few years ago. It seems the governor appointed him temporary marshal here in Gold Creek.
I remember Tonto speaking of him as a good lawman.
Yes, Grant is... Well, that's strange. Look at this item. Large crime increase the past week. Why should there be an outbreak of lawlessness a week before election? Clean elections are very important.
Maybe we should look into this one, sir.
We'll water and feed the horses, and then go on to Gold Creek.
There, Jimmy. Volume 1, issue number 2. All I have to do now is set up my editorial. Oh, good morning, Mr. Hawkins.
Good morning, Miss Curtis. Brought over your groceries.
I'll get your money.
Oh, you can pay me when you come by. Do you have an extra copy of the Clarion?
We're all sold out.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. I understand you came out for Marshal Grant for sheriff.
Yes.
You ought to back the winning horse, Mrs. Curtis. Luke Potter will be elected.
Not if everyone gets out to vote.
Oh, I'm not even going to bother.
Sam?
Oh, hello, Marshal.
I'm not asking you to vote for me, Sam, but vote. This is one of the few countries where you have that privilege, and it's your duty to use it so we can make this town a good place to live.
Now get off the soapbox, Marshal. This town will be the same no matter who gets elected.
You're so wrong, Sam.
Well, that's my opinion. Goodbye, folks.
I stopped by to say thanks for supporting me in that editorial, Mrs. Curtis.
I like the things that you seem to stand for, Marshal. But I'm a little concerned, too. What do you think are the reasons for the outbreaks of murders and robberies this last week?
Well, I have my suspicions, Mrs. Curtis, but I haven't been able to prove anything. It's almost as though... Stay inside.
The marshal will catch him, Mom? I don't know, Jimmy. I don't know.
Another holdup in broad daylight. That's some marshal we have. Can't even deal with a few petty outlaws.
Oh, how do you do, ma'am? You're Mrs. Curtis?
Yes, I am.
I'm Elias Bradley, and this is Luke Potter, who's running for sheriff.
Mr. Potter?
It's an honor, ma'am.
It's terrible, all these shootings.
It was terrible indeed. Did you gentlemen come to see me for anything?
Well, we've come to congratulate you on your newspaper, Mrs. Curtis. We're indeed fortunate that you decided to settle here.
Well, I felt that there would be more opportunity in a new town.
Mrs. Curtis, if you require any assistance, just feel free to call upon me. As owner of the hotel and the stage line to Yuma, I have some influence in these parts.
Thank you.
Well, that's a fine-looking hand press you have there.
It belonged to my late husband.
Oh, if you'll allow me. You know, as a young man in San Francisco, I was a printer's devil. I can appreciate this machine. There aren't many of them in the West. Mrs. Curtis, since you're going to make your home in Gold Creek, I know you want the best for it.
Oh, I do.
Do you realize that last week alone there were more murders and holdups than in the past 6 months? Do you know what that means?
I'd like to find out.
Well, it means that our marshal doesn't command very much respect. I'd like to make a suggestion.
What's that?
In your next issue, why don't you print that you've examined Mr. Potter's qualifications more thoroughly and you've switched your support to him as sheriff?
I'd only be too glad to look into Mr. Potter's qualifications. And if I felt that he were better suited, why, certainly I'd support him for sheriff.
That's fine, Mrs. Curtis. You won't regret it. Come along, Luke.
Good day.
Mom. Yes, dear?
Mom, you aren't going to support Mr. Potter instead of Marshal Grant, are you?
I don't believe so, dear. But you said that... I only said that I'd examine Mr. Potter's qualifications. I don't believe that will change my mind.
Gee, that's good. I sure want Bill Grant for sheriff.
I'm not certain we'll get Bill Grant for sheriff. Unless he gets help of a very powerful kind. And where he can get such help, I don't know.
It's Marshal Grant. He's lucky. It's just a scalp wound.
I'll get water and bandages.
Who are you?
My name doesn't matter. My friend and I want to help you.
What's the mask for, then?
Perhaps this letter from the governor will help explain.
Yes. I know the writing. Seen that signature many times. To all federal marshals, will you please give the bearer all possible cooperation? He's known as the...
We were on our way to Gold Creek to look into the coming election when I heard the shot and found you. What happened, Marshal?
Oh, I must have been ambushed. I guess that blasted owl hoot left me for dead.
Perhaps, or we might have frightened him off. Marshal, I read in the Clarions that you've been especially busy this week. What's the story on that?
Well, frankly, I believe it's an organized attempt to discredit me so that Luke Potter will be elected.
Do you have any idea who's behind it?
Well, the only men with influence and power are Stilson, who owns the gambling hall, and Elias Bradley, another important man who aims to be governor next spring. I sure could use some help, mister.
Dan and I'll do all we can to help.
Well, we'll have to work fast. The election for sheriff is day after tomorrow.
Do you think you can ride now?
Yeah, I think I can make it. We gotta go slowly.
Brad? Well, boss, here it is, but you're not gonna like what you wrote.
Yeah. In response to a request from Mr. Elias Bradley, we've again examined the qualifications of Mr. Potter for sheriff. It is still our belief that Gold Creek should elect Marshal Grant. She's double-crossed us.
Want me names to go over and smash your press? Teach her a lesson?
That press is the most valuable thing in this town. It would be stupid to destroy it. Anyway, I think I may have a use for that myself.
Where have you been? I led the marshal out in the range. I figured here was our chance to cinch the election. I even took a shot at him, too.
You killed him? If this latest trick of yours has made a martyr out of Grant, you're through working for me.
Relax, he isn't dead. I saw a masked man and a young fella helping him out. They're even bringing him back to town now.
Masked man? He's not one of our crowd.
Sometimes I wonder why I have you idiots around. Well, this means we'll have to work fast. Now, I've got a little job for you two. I happen to know that Mrs. Curtis is having a meeting this afternoon at the Ladies' Aid Society. That means she'll be out of the shop. Here's what I want you to do.
Okay, there's nobody here.
What do we do if the kid comes in? Plug him?
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Go lock the front door. We gotta get this stuff out of here.
Come on, give me a hand. That's it.
Well, that's the last of it. Go take the wagon out to the mill. Get this stuff into the shack. I'll pick up the boss and we'll meet you out there. Get going. I'll take care of this.
What the?
Mr. Hawkins! Mr. Hawkins! That boy.
Ah, good work, boys. Get this equipment inside. We've got a lot of work ahead of us.
Sure have. You aim to print a full newspaper edition?
Don't be a fool, Pete. We're getting out a special election extra, a sheet folded double.
Oh, Mr. Hawkins! Mr. Hawkins! Help! Somebody help me, please! Mr. Hawkins, are you all right? Are you all right, Mr.
Curtis! Oh, what's happened?
Oh, Marshal, I just came in and found Mr. Hawkins like this. Oh, Marshal, a masked man.
Don't be alarmed, Mrs. Curtis. My friend and I are working with the marshal.
Yes, they want to help us.
I think he'll be all right.
My press. All my equipment gone.
Apparently someone wants to silence you, Mrs. Curtis, because he doesn't like what you're writing.
Oh, why didn't they just smash the press?
That's a good question, Marshal. The answer might be that the man behind this scheme knows the value of the press. Perhaps he'd tend to use it himself.
Masked?
It's all right, Sam. These two men are on the side of the law.
Well, if you say so, Marshal.
Just what happened here, Mr. Hawkins?
Well, I came back to ask Mrs. Curtis to save me a copy of the next issue. The door was locked. I knocked and somebody opened it, and then I got hit on the head.
Oh, Marshal.
Oh.
Jimmy's gone after the thieves.
What?
Dear Mom, I've gone after the crooks. Jimmy.
Why would he have done that? He's only 12 years old. If he had seen the thieves, why wouldn't he have gone into the street and called for help?
Mrs. Curtis, we can't expect a 12-year-old boy to act like an adult. Undoubtedly, Jimmy thought he was doing the right thing. Does he own a horse?
Yes, Prince, a pony.
Say, wait a minute. I just remembered. Out back, when I came in, I heard a wagon start up fast, like the driver was in a hurry.
A good lead, Mr. Hawkins. We'll follow those tracks. And try not to worry, Mrs. Curtis. We'll find your son. Come on, Marshal. Dan!
This is going to be a searching examination, as it were, of both candidates. And I wouldn't be surprised that Potter will win in a walk after the Clarion gets through with Marshal Grant. Ah, fine.
Oh, Prince! Oh!
Not bad. It's very good. Just stack the papers as they come off the press. Never mind the comment.
We might as well give up. Apparently we lost his tracks on that bedrock back there. We've been going around in circles for 2 hours. We might as well try to...
Wait. What's that?
Looks like Jimmy's horse, Prince. Why, it is Prince.
Look at this, sir. Flour sack. Marshal, is there a flour mill in this area?
Yeah, there used to be an old mill, but it's burnt down now. As I recall, there's still an old shack standing and a lean-to.
We'll tie up the pony and then let's get going.
Well, I still haven't lost my touch with the press.
Papers are all packed on your horse, boss.
Good. I want to get back to town and distribute those papers right away.
What'll we do?
Well, you better stay here and see that no one stumbles across this place. After Potter's been in office for a while, we'll convince Mrs. Curtis to leave town. Then we'll accidentally discover the press and have a paper of our own.
Well, that sounds good to me.
I'll check with you tomorrow. Oh, boy. Well, see you later.
All right, let's go inside. Somebody's in the lean-to.
Who is it? Oh, it's the Curtis kid. How long you been here?
He must have seen everything.
What do we do?
Get him inside.
Let me go! Let me go! Let me go! Let me go!
So you were trying to spy on us, huh?
Who sent you here?
Nobody sent me here. I came by myself.
Look, kid, this is no time for games.
Either you tell us the truth or we'll find some way to get it out of you.
All right, have it your own way.
Drop your guns. All right, Marshal. They're all yours. Tie them, Dan. Are you all right, Jimmy?
Yes, sir.
Here's the press and all the equipment. It looks as though we caught them red-handed.
There was another man here, too. He printed a lot of bad things about Marshal Grant. He said he was going back to town and pass out the papers before the election tomorrow.
Who was it?
Mr. Bradley. Say, why are you wearing a mask?
Oh, Jimmy, it's like a marshal's badge. It's a sign of service. I want to compliment you on the way you sent Prince back with that message. That showed a lot of intelligence.
Thanks.
Marshal, Jimmy will help you get these men back to town. Dan and I are leaving now. I only hope those papers haven't been distributed yet. Come on, Dan. Watch them close, Marshal.
What took you so long? Long? I've never seen a one-sheet extra printed more quickly in my life.
Yeah, well, I saw Sam Hawkins a while back, and he told me the marshal and some of his friends right now are investigating the disappearance of that press.
Well, they can't track it to us. Anyway, after tomorrow, it won't matter. We'll be running this town. I'd better get rid of these. Come in.
Here's the box of cigars you ordered, Mr. Potter.
Thanks, Sam. Oh, incidentally, has the marshal found that printing press yet?
Well,
Yes, he has, Mr. Potter. We found it over at the burnout mill and arrested the 2 men who did the actual stealing.
Who are you?
Hawkins, would you introduce me to this gentleman?
This is Elias Bradley, mister.
Mr. Bradley, you're the man behind this whole scheme. You printed the papers to sway the election.
I haven't been near a printing press.
The printer's ink on your hands proves otherwise.
It's ridiculous.
Drop it, mister.
Good work, Dan. Let's see if we can find those papers. Mr. Hawkins, I suggest you look in the cabinet first.
Why, you dirty, low-down snake. And you must be in this as deep as he is, Potter.
Now, wait a minute, Sam.
What about the murders and robberies in Gold Creek? You were behind those too, weren't you?
No. No, it was Bradley.
Potter.
Yes, Potter. What about Bradley?
Now, listen, Bradley, I'm not going to hang for the things that you and Pete Names did.
Shut up, you idiot.
Listen, mister, if I'm willing to testify against Bradley and the others, will the law give me a break?
That'll be up to the jury, Potter.
Well, I'll take that chance. Yes, I'll take that chance.
Marshal Grant, elected sheriff.
How does it feel to be first sheriff of a new town, Grant?
Oh, wonderful. But I never could have made it without you two.
And thank you very much for all you've done for me and Jimmy. We're having a jamboree tonight for the sheriff. Could you and...
We'd like to attend, Mrs. Curtis, but now that Bradley and his men are behind bars, Dan and I must be on our way. Good luck, Sheriff.
Thanks.
So long, son.
I hope I'll see you again.
Perhaps you will, Jimmy. Goodbye, Mrs. Curtis. Come on, Dan.
Goodbye, Sheriff.
Bye.
You know, I never asked his name.
Why, Mom, you know who that is. Remember the stories Dad used to tell me about him and Tonto and his horse Silver?
Those are only stories, dear. There is no such person.
There is, too. Here's a silver bullet he gave me. He's the Lone Ranger.
Hail Silver! Be with the Lone Ranger and Tonto same time next week for new dangers in another thrill-packed adventure when the Lone Ranger rides again. The Lone Ranger.